Hello, everyone. India is now open to inbound tourists that come from all across the world and see the many wonders of India. And we are so happy about that because finally, not only can we go abroad, but we can also welcome visitors and show them our beautiful country that luckily all of us have been able to travel around in the last year or so. So let's start talking. I thought today we will talk of one of the monuments that really is the most popular monument in India. Welcome to Veena Words Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life. As usual, this is Sunila Patil here, and with me is Neil. Hi, Neil.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. I think it was apt that you say that it is one of India's most popular monuments, but I would say it is the world's most popular monuments, right? Because it is one of the new seven wonders of the world. Like the survey that was done in the late 2010s or something like that, where people had to vote and decide which monument becomes a feature of the seven wonders of the world or the seven new wonders of the world. And as a matter of fact, when you allow people to vote, of course there is a chance of you casting two votes. So the Taj Mahal easily was the highest voted monument in the world, and that's why it's on the top of that list. So it is one of the most popular monuments in the world, I would say, and not only in India.
Definitely, Neil. I think what I meant was it is one of the most visited monuments in India
Oh, okay.
and the most popular in the world for sure. I mean, also so iconic, right? You can't go wrong. I mean, the way it looks, the architecture, you can just point at it even if you don't know much about it. You don't have to second guess that is it really the Taj. So, Neil, it's such a beautiful monument. It is in our country. We're so proud of it. So let's talk of how did it actually come into being, and there is so much that went beyond the construction of the Taj. So do you want to start with how the Taj was constructed in the first place?
I think that is a good place to start because Shah Jahan, of course, commissioned the building of the Taj Mahal in 1632, and it was completed in 1643. And over
About
a
20 years, right?
Yeah,
Something.
about 20 years. And there was apparently one architect, and this architect's name has not been mentioned before. Only if you go to the Taj Mahal, to the guides, the local guides mention it. And his name was Ustad Ahmad Lahori. And it is said that about 20,000 artisans, like it could be all types of people, laborers were used to build the Taj Mahal. But something that I find unique about the construction of the Taj Mahal is that Shah Jahan initially bought land from Maharaja Jai Singh in Agra, where the Taj Mahal is situated today. And the Maharaja was given another fort. The fort was built for the Maharaja in the main city of Agra. So he gave a large palace in the center of Agra in exchange for this place or this land that was bought. But what I found unique was that when they were building the Taj Mahal, material from all across the world was brought in uh, to actually build this. So, like I said, 20,000 or 22,000
Yeah.
laborers, painters, artists, stone cutters were used. 1,000 elephants were used to transport materials.
Yeah.
And this material was brought from different parts. Like when I was doing my research, I came across things like the marble was from this place called Makrana in Rajasthan.
Rajasthan.
The jade and crystal was from China. The sapphire was from Sri Lanka. The jasper was from Punjab. And the turquoise was from Tibet. And in all, I've just found this out because a couple of articles mention this, that it was 28 types of precious or semi-precious stones that were laid into the marble, and that is the Taj Mahal that we see today. And it's just unique, right? Because back then, when they didn't have the modern things to construct a magnificent monument like this, the Taj Mahal has stood the test of time, and even today it is one of the new seven wonders of the world. I just find that intriguing. What do you think?
I think it's amazing, Neil, and yeah, it's really nice that you've told us how and it took so long to build, because I think it is a labor of love. It is definitely something that what not just built as a afterthought or something. He really worked for it, and it just shows how much he really loved his wife. I think he set a very high benchmark for anyone who wants to create something for a person you love. I mean, Shah Jahan built it for Mumtaz Mahal, and she died during childbirth. She was his third and his favorite wife, and apparently they got married when they were really young. That's what happened in those days. He was 20, she was 19, and they spent quite a few years together. And he wanted a place where Mumtaz could reside in paradise. So there was a poem written for her which said that Mumtaz will always be in paradise, and he thought, why not create that on earth as well, so that the rest of us can also keep seeing her as she is in paradise. So I think it's really stunning, and that is why even in the architecture of the Taj, Neil, you can always see, you look at it, and I think it always makes you feel peaceful. There is something, you know uh, so peaceful about it and so serene about it, that it definitely reflects in that. And I think a part of it has to do with the way the architecture was, and one of the main things of Islamic architecture, of course, the architecture is influenced by Islamic architecture, Indian, and a lot of Persian influences. You mentioned the architect, he was also himself Persian, so they got him in from Persia. They got in another person to do the calligraphy on the Taj, is also from a Persian artist. So there's a lot of Persian influence out there, and that's what they spoke during those times as well. Persian was something that was spoken very widely, and that is how they built it. So I think it has to do with the symmetry, because everything is so symmetrical. You have four minarets, you have one central dome, you have the gardens, and you have this canal that cuts through four canals. So everything is equal and perfectly symmetrical and so beautiful, except for one thing. We'll come to that later. And I think the other thing why it looks so serene, of course, is the marble. You mentioned the Makrana marble, and actually they laid down red sandstone and then they covered it with marble. So it's just so serene and so beautiful. And yes, there are more than one ways to see it as well. So I think
So,
it's amazing.
I'd like to stop you there. And there's
Mhm.
actually a story about the scaffolding that was there when
Yes.
the Taj Mahal was being constructed.
Mhm.
So the scaffolding that was done, all of the laborers, because the scaffolding was huge, and back then it seemed like
Mhm.
uh, massive. It was always assumed that it would take years and years and years to remove this. So you've
Mhm.
taken 2 decades to build this enormous thing that is the Taj Mahal. And people always thought that, okay, how will we be able to see it if it's going to take years to like remove the scaffolding? So there is a legend that says that, Shah Jahan made it a rule, and this is legend, no one has confirmed it or anything like that, and there have been many reports like this which are still to be confirmed about the Taj Mahal, that he said that anyone could keep the bricks from the scaffolding, and if like whoever removes it gets that brick, that's yours, so you can take it home, you can use it for
Mhm.
whatever purpose. And it is said that that is why the scaffolding was removed overnight. Now, of course, listeners, you could fact check it, I was not able to confirm it, but this was something that had come in my research. But another thing about the scaffolding was that the Taj Mahal has been subject to quite a lot of threats also. So it was during the 1942 Second World War, or 1965 and 1971, where India was at war, that the Taj Mahal was covered in scaffolding again in order to ensure that enemy planes do not bombard the Taj Mahal. And imagine, had they not done it, like we would not have been able to see the Taj Mahal as it is today. But well, we have it today, and I'm glad that we have it today. But Sunila, there was also something that I read about the Black Taj Mahal.
Yes.
What was that like? Like, did they plan to build a Black Taj Mahal across the Yamuna on the other side, or is that a myth?
So Neil, we'll never really know, right? And that is how it is with a lot of these monuments and the stories around it. Like you mentioned, it's difficult to fact check today, but it is known and it is said, and they really strongly believe that Shah Jahan himself wanted a black Taj Mahal right across the Yamuna, and he wanted to create a bridge so that it would connect to this one, and he could be close to his beloved Mumtaz Mahal. So, and the reason why many people agree to that is, if you look at the Taj, everything inside is symmetrical. Even, just almost everything except the cenotaph of Shah Jahan. So you have the actual tombs as well of both Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal. They are buried there. But for others to see, you have the decorative cenotaphs, because again, according to Islam, the tombs should always be plain. There should be nothing decorative over it. And that is the reason that they build a cenotaph in which you can have some decorations, and they are actually empty, but yes, they are representative of the tombs. So if you just look at the cenotaph of Shah Jahan, it disturbs the symmetry. So the whole, they say that it was never meant to be there. It was only meant to be for Mumtaz Mahal. So probably he did plan to build a black Taj Mahal across the river for himself. But of course, history runs its own course, and Aurangzeb later then imprisoned Shah Jahan in Agra fort, and he had to live there, from where also, by the way, you can view the Taj, and that is how he spent his days towards the end, looking at his Taj. And then later he was buried in the Taj itself. So the black Taj Mahal was never really built, but yes, they say that very strongly that probably they even started working, but it was destroyed, is what they say.
Yeah, and I also read that the Black Taj Mahal, like, Shah Jahan had this dream, had this obsession that, having a white and a black one. And archaeologists have actually rebuilt a pool on the other side of the Yamuna. And on a full moon night, if you are to see the actual Taj Mahal, they say that you see a black reflection. So there is also this story about, black Taj Mahal being seen on full moon nights. But that being said, and speaking about the full moon, the Taj Mahal is actually open for night viewing on full moon nights, and 2 days before that and 2 days after that. So I think, how we often talk about going to a monument or a place that is worth really going to twice in a day. And I think for both of us, one of the first things that comes to mind is the Golden Temple. We go during the morning and at night too, right? So the Taj Mahal also can be one monument that you can visit during the day and also at night. And also the Mysore Palace, right? We did an episode on that. So that was also quite cool. Now,
I just want to add here that with the full moon, and I have done this, if you think of India, Run of Kutch is something that you have to do on full moon, because the entire place just shines with the moon's light, and it is just simply stunning. So definitely do it in the day and night. And coming back to the Taj Mahal, I mean, just imagine what a sight it must be, that it is basking in the full moon and the light that is coming from there. And one more note there, you can actually, one of the best times probably would be sunrise, because the crowds are less and the sun is just coming up and the Taj is being lit up. What an amazing sight. And again, sunset is one of the most popular times that you can visit, because with the light, with the sunlight, the Taj changes color. The marble is such that it is reflecting color all day. So from sunrise to sunset and full moon, you could just see it at any time of the day and go, wow, this is amazing. And then come back and see it again at a different time of the day.
It is quite marvelous. But I have an interesting story about the Taj Mahal. Like, if you look at cement, like cement was invented in the 1800s. Like cement was found to be
much
in the
later.
And the Taj Mahal was 1600s, right? So I read a very interesting article which said that if cement was invented much later, how were the marble stones on, like, at the Taj Mahal pasted together? So, like, there are many methods of like pasting together marble, but here a special kind of material was actually prepared to ensure that the stones stay together onto the foundation stone. And this solution was called something called saroj. So it's basically made of clay and also has a mixture of jaggery, pulses, sugar, raisin, and gum. And this is mixed together, and it was used to paste the marbles together. Now, if you look at the Taj Mahal, it has stood the test of time. It has fought earthquakes, storms, rains, sun, heat, winter, and also acid rain, because pollution has become a big thing in Agra, and the environmentalists have also come like to protect the Taj Mahal, and many regulations have been brought in. But this saroj material was used, and the Taj Mahal is still the same as it was in the 1600s. So you may ask, like, why aren't today's buildings built with this material that is saroj? So I tried checking this, and it is said that if you build a house with cement, it might cost you, like, say X or 100 rupees. But if you use saroj to build the same house, this mixture to just make it is going to cost you 5x or 10x. So 5 times or 10 times. And that is why, like, well, saroj was used then. Today we use cement, and that's how like that is something interesting. But you also have an interesting story also about the minarets, right, that were built.
Yes, Neil. But before we come to the minarets, you mentioned about the saroj or the mixture that was used. And when they were using it, they, the way they did it, it was called pietra dura, which is the way of inlaying marble. So if you see the Taj, the beautiful, decorations are not coming out, but they are all flat at the level of the marble itself. And what is really interesting is next time you go there, Neil, try and count, because you see a lot of plants and species of flowers and plants. Now if you try and count how many species of plants are reflected in these drawings, you'll be amazed that more than 46 different types of plant species have been identified by botanists, that they're reflecting in the designs of the Taj, because again they didn't believe in using animals really. So everything there, and everything has a symbol. So for example, pomegranate is the symbol of abundance and fertility. Lotus means serenity and peace, and that is how they chose as to what you should use where within the Taj as well. And that I thought was really quite interesting. I remember when I went there, and then we had to actually stop some of the, not the professional guides, but many people were trying to shine their light on them and show you the color, and which is something that we really don't recommend, because there is a reason that the committees have not allowed the light, so that we can conserve it for the future generations. So I think if we see someone doing that, we should also take a step ahead and definitely stop that from happening. So yeah, that is something about the cement. And coming to the minarets, we raised the question about the minarets. So what is really interesting is the way the minarets were built. The four minarets, again in perfect symmetry, they surround the Taj, and these are built, it's an optical illusion actually. So these were built facing a little outwards, so they kind of lean a little outwards, and why? Because in case of a calamity, they will never fall inside, but they were built so that they will fall outside. And also the optical illusion helps, because when you're standing at the gate and you look in, you see the Taj, it looks huge, but as you walk towards it, it starts shrinking in size. And that is like an optical illusion that you see, is all because of the way the minarets were built. So amazing.
Yeah, and they were also built as working minarets, right? So a
Yeah,
minaret
yeah, yeah.
it often has this balcony where
Hmm.
the cleric or the priest comes out and calls everyone for the prayer.
Yeah.
So they were built that way. But at the start of the episode, you mentioned that a lot of this is Persian architecture, Indo-Islamic architecture. There is one part of the Taj that is not that, but is actually European style architecture, European style. And that is like the gardens, the manicured
Hmm.
gardens that are there. And that's because in the 19th century, it was Lord Curzon who decided that, we need to restore the Taj Mahal because, like, during the time since the 1600s, Shah Jahan was, of course, in jail, house arrest. Then he passed away. Then in the 18th century, the Jat rulers of Bharatpur attacked it, stole two chandeliers, and then it had gone through a lot. So like restoration was needed, and it was restored, and the gardens were then built in a very European style, is what, like, I am aware of. But
Yeah, so
uh,
the
yeah,
architecture is still Islamic, but they replanted with trees to make it resemble more like a British style, is what they say. So
classic British, right?
yeah,
They
yeah,
left a mark at the Taj Mahal too.
yes.
So I remember you mentioning that there are replicas of the Taj Mahal or similar looking monuments across the world. What was that about?
So, Neil, we often wonder that, can there be only one and only one Taj Mahal? And of course, we take pride that yes, there is one, because, like you said, even just the cost of making that saroj or cement is so much that you can't really replicate something this beautiful. But many people tried, and none other than Aurangzeb himself. So, in Aurangabad in Maharashtra, he built the Bivika Maqbara, which was, they call it also the Taj of the Deccan. That is the another name given to it. Again, has four minarets and a central onion domed mausoleum and formal garden. So which is also quite nice and really nice to explore, but of course you cannot compare it to the Taj. I remember I was in Shenzhen and I was at the Windows of the World, and of course you have a replica of the Taj Mahal there too. Then there is one in Bangladesh as well. But the most interesting replica, Neil, is, and do look him up. I found it really interesting when I found this, is actually in California in Sausalito, and it is nothing but a houseboat. So, you had this vineyard entrepreneur like Bill Harlan, and when he came in the mid 1970s to the Taj, he was so impressed that he decided he wanted one back home, and he actually went back and built a Taj Mahal houseboat. So if you Google a Taj Mahal houseboat, you will see versions of his Taj Mahal, and actually he has a houseboat out there. So it's quite interesting to see that. And then of course he was in Napa Valley. So it's really interesting to see an American build a
That's
Taj
incredible.
Mahal
Like,
houseboat. Yeah.
yeah, because the Taj Mahal was like, it cost back then like 3.2 crore to build it. And in today's like money, or today's inflation adjusted like cost of making it, would be about 70 billion Indian rupees. But that's incredible. But Sunila, now I want to ask you, like, as we reach the end of the episode, two things. One is that often the Taj Mahal is part of an itinerary that is popularly known in India as the Golden Triangle.
Yeah.
So what is the Golden Triangle itinerary?
So, Neil, the reason I guess it is called the Golden Triangle is that you kind of see the, well, I wouldn't say the best of India, but the best of India for a first visit to India. So you have Delhi, Agra, and Jaipur. And for people, especially who are traveling from abroad, who are coming from other countries and they want to visit India, I think the Taj Mahal is the top of the bucket list for everybody, right? They have to tick it off. And it India is a big country. So, like we've been seeing that it's impossible to see our country in one visit. I mean, as Indians, also, I think every month, also, if we took off and saw one state, it would still not be enough to discover all these wonders. So when people come in, it makes sense to come in and see the Taj Mahal and do make an itinerary around it, so that you don't spend too much time just traveling from, say, the north to the south to the east to the west, but travel in and around. So I think approximately road travel on this itinerary anywhere would take you between 3 to 4 hours. So it's quite comfortable on any given day. And then you have Delhi with its amazing monuments, and as the capital, the gateway city for the north to India, and the food trails and so many other amazing things to do there. From there, you can come in either to Jaipur or Agra, maybe to Agra, see the Taj Mahal, be there, and along with that, do other things out there, and then go into Jaipur, which again, every day, also, if you see a monument in Jaipur, it is not enough. So you have the Rajputs, the Mughals, and, all of India in between out there. So I think it's one of the most popular, definitely one of the most popular first time itineraries to India.
Awesome. And my second question to you is that, are there any hotels that sell rooms with a view of the Taj Mahal?
Yes, and we would all love to stay in one for sure. My favorite one, and I think a favorite for a lot of people, of course, is the Oberoi Amar Vilas. I did go there for dinner once, and I saw just how beautiful the hotel itself is. I mean, you can just spend a day and not go anywhere, just go to the Taj and be in the hotel itself. But you do have a view to the Taj from this hotel. There are also the others which are a little easier on the pocket as well. So you have Clarks, and you have the Taj Hotel and smaller hotels. You can also have a view of the Taj from one of the restaurants out there. So you can go across to any one of the restaurants and see the Taj. Another really good viewing point is Mehtab Garden. So if you go there, you get an amazing view of the Taj as well. And sometimes people do take out a boat on the Yamuna. Of course, that depends on the level of the water of the river. And then a boatman can take you across, and you get to see the Taj from a river as well. So there are some really amazing ways to see the Taj.
That's awesome. Well, as we ended, Sunila, I just want to mention, instead of information, I'm going to give like a tip that if you're going to the Taj Mahal, you have to walk a lot. And from where you park your car, it is a lot of walking. And sometimes you may go during the day when the sun is out, it's scorching heat. So make sure you wear like appropriate clothing, and you also wear good shoes. Don't wear slippers, don't wear heels, because it is not going to help you. You are going to end with, like, feet that are going to be killing you by the end of it. So walking, it's a lot of walking. So make sure you do that right. As we ended, Sunila, how do you want to end it?
Neil, I think you're absolutely right. And the reason that you have to walk a lot also is that earlier vehicles were allowed to come in much closer. But there's a very interesting fact that there's a lot of restoration work going on. And we can see that because the Taj had started yellowing, and they had to take care of the pollution, in the area. And I think it's a great step that the vehicles now cannot come closer to the Taj. So definitely keep your shoes on. But I was also, I also came across this article that said that one of the ways that the Taj probably is keeping its beauty is not quite different from how the women, or say someone like Mumtaz Mahal herself, would have kept, maintained a beauty. And that is by using a mud pack, which takes away all the impurities. And that is what they're doing to the Taj as well. So organic mud packs are being applied, which are now pulling out all the impurities and making sure that the Taj remains as beautiful as ever. If anyone's planning to visit in February, and I hope that this year we can see it happen, is the Taj Mahotsav. So it's an amazing festival where a lot of people from all across the area come in, handicrafts and saris and all kinds of different food, and it's really a lot of fun. So let's see if it happens, then it would be worth a visit during that time.
One thing we didn't cover, Sunila, is that story which has been like Chinese whispers that Shah Jahan cut off the hands of everyone who built the Taj
Yes.
Mahal. Listeners, well, you've been hearing it for so many years, but it is not true. Like, it has not been proven. It is something that someone came up with, and like it has just spread like wildfire. But that is apparently not true, because no one has been able to prove it. No writings anywhere mention that.
It's
And
an interesting story, right? I think that's
yeah.
why it kind of is alive till today. But it's reassuring to know it's not true.
Exactly. And yeah, after that, the Shah Jahan and his architects built so many other places, right? Which were also like after that or before that. But the Taj Mahal stands out. And listeners, that was the Taj Mahal, one of the 7 new wonders of the world, the symbol of India, the one of the best features on the Golden Triangle itinerary, and so much more. This is Neil and Sunila signing off from another episode of Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life. It was lovely being on another episode, and we will see you next Saturday. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye.